Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are. It's the Joint Waste Disposal Board meeting of the 9th of July 2020. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence?
We've not received any apologies for absence, and I believe all of you are in attendance. And can I therefore just run through everyone? Councillor Mrs. Hayes?
Here.
Councillor Harrison?
Here.
Councillor Barnett Ward?
Here.
Councillor Page?
Here.
Councillor Halsall?
Yes.
Councillor Bath?
Yes.
In that case, everyone is here.
Thank you.
The first item on the agenda is the election of chairman for the municipal year. Can you please raise your hand if you wish to nominate somebody? Councillor Halsall, I think you were first.
I would like to make a statement before any nominations are made.
Okay, we'll fire away.
Thank you. I'd like to make a statement before we consider this item. The greatest challenge presenting the world is global warming. I was apparently the first council leader to declare a climate emergency. I would quickly add, not the first council, because I believe Reading picked us to the post. Currently, our recycling rates are very different, with Reading in the mid-30s, Bracknell in the mid-40s, and Wokingham in the mid-50s. A material part of global warming agenda is waste. Indeed, David Attenborough says the key to the climate emergency is eliminating waste. Wokingham's commissioned a study to determine a roadmap to achieve the objective, with milestones of 70% recycling in the near term. RE3 must be a key part to that objective. It is not imperative that the three authorities go down the same path. Indeed, the beauty of unitaries is they can plot their own trajectory within their own timescale to suit their own budgets and residents' wishes. The preferred choice, of course, is that RE3 adapts to cater for all its partners flexibly and consensually. To do so, we need to address the governance and ensure that RE3 is not the fiefdom of any particular authority. Indeed, the Local Government Act 1972, which governs joint working, was amended so that any joint working would cease to have effect if it did. Woking, I believe, is by far the biggest contributor of the partnership. I believe the contribution is roughly equivalent to both other partners. Our partnership is coming into its autumn years, and we need now to consider what we wish to do as lead times are long. RE3 will survive that process if it can find a consensual way of working flexibly with all its partners, failing which Woking will in time have to part company with its partners. However, whilst climate change is of primary importance, we are in the corona emergency. Our officers and members are fully engaged in both the emergency, the recovery and the aftermath. I propose we defer consideration of a new chairman and deputy chairman until our next meeting in 3 months' time, continuing with the current appointees. This will give officers and members an opportunity to consider the best path and the issues. A deferral of a year would be too long, as Woking needs to conclude our long-term waste strategy, for which the future shape and governance of RE3 is material. Clearly, Bracknell and Reading can force a vote. This would be unwise, as a partnership of three cannot operate successfully if any partner is marginalised, particularly the biggest contributor and the most successful recycler. Such a vote would also speak volumes RE3's future direction. So I urge members to support my proposal, charge officers to engage with each other over the next 3 months, and for members to talk with one another so we can create an environment which is successful for the next 10 years and thereafter. Please support my proposal.
I think the issue I have at the moment is that the current constitution of this board is that at your annual meeting in each year, you should appoint a chairman, and unless the chairman resigns, they remain in office for the year. This is obviously the annual meeting, and if anybody feels that there is a need to revisit the constitution, then I think that's perfectly reasonable to ask for a report back to the next meeting. But in terms of continuing with the business of the board, you ought really, I mean, I feel that you ought to stick to the constitution. You should be formally reappointing a chairman.
Derek, I think we could set aside that if we so decide to do.
Well, Chair, I've circulated in the chat a formal proposal to re-elect yourself as chair for the fourth coming year. The Constitution, under terms 4.1 and 4.2, it makes that quite clear, and nothing that John has said is in any way prevented from further discussion. It doesn't require a deferral of the chair or vice chair whatsoever. And it would have been courteous to have circulated that in advance, to have at least given some notice. And I would therefore propose that we continue with the business. If John wants to circulate what he said along with any other proposals, I, for one, as I've said to him before, would be happy to consider them, and I'm sure the rest of the partnership. But we do need a chair under the Constitution, and nothing that John has said in any way prevents discussion of what he has said. I'm not clear exactly what it is that Wokingham are wanting still, and perhaps a paper from John or his officers that could be circulated before, in good time ahead of the next meeting, would enable a more productive discussion. So for purposes of today, Chair, I have formally proposed that you continue as chair for the forthcoming year and would invite a seconder. Well, I don't invite a seconder, but somebody does.
Could is anybody willing to second that?
I'm seconding.
Okay, are there any other nominations? In that case, Councillor Mrs Hayes, you are re-elected as chairman of the board.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you, Tony, for your words, and thank you, John, for seconded. And Councillor Halsall, I would have appreciated if you'd had something, as if you had read out, to be circulated. It would have been courteous on that part. Having said that, I will then thank everyone for voting me as chairman. As we move on now, the next would be for a vice chairman. Isn't that the correct manner of this? The nomination for vice chairman.
Chairman, I nominate Councillor Tony Page.
And I will second that. Are there any others? Then Tony Page. I hope, Councillor Page, you are prepared to take on the vice chairman's role.
Yes, Chair, happy to.
Thank you. Moving swiftly on, ladies and gentlemen, declarations of interest on 4. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. There being no declaration, I may remind everyone that you can make a declaration at any time should it occur to you at a later point. Anyone declaring that disclosing pecuniary interest will need to leave the meeting when we get to that relevant point. Thank you. All right, we move from there. Then we move, Oliver is here now, isn't he? The next is on the agenda, urgent items of business. Do we, oh no, it's thrown me, thank you. Minutes of the meeting of the Joint Waste Disposal Board, which took place on the 23rd of January, pages 5 to 10. Oliver, are you going to take that forward?
Thank
Oliver.
you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me? Is that all right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's it feels like a lifetime away, I'm sure, for everyone, when we met last in January. A few of these items are covered off in the papers in front of us. I wanted just to cover off a couple of the issues. In terms of Lakeside EFW, there is no further update at the moment.
That's the 19, yes.
Yes. In terms of paint, the green machine unit has now been closed down. We're cleaning up the site, and the unit will be handed back to Bracknell in the next month. the reuse shop and those items listed there really have all sort of effectively been sort of mothballed during the intervening period for obvious reasons. That is starting to come back, in particular, though not actually the reuse shop, but Sue Ryder we know are back active. So those items that we have been identifying for reuse are now being passed back to them. So that's great news. It's a really successful part of our relationship with them. The trade waste trial, as we know, has been extended for the sort of basically for another 6 months. So that will continue. I think that's probably it from the minutes, Chair.
Can we go back then just to the paint? Is there another option, or is there another company or something, or another charity, or with FCC that we could be looking at, that we could assist or be involved in with regards to the paint waste?
Yes,
it was
Chair.
a shame that the green machine did not, come to fruition. But is there any out there at all that we know of, Oliver?
Yes, Chairman. Our first step is going to be to have an exchange at both of the sites. That is a bit problematic at the moment for obvious reasons. People not wanting to pick stuff up. I mean, they're bringing stuff to the recycling sites, obviously. But that's our initial plan, and we'll get that up and running as soon as it's safe to do so. And thereafter, if we were to have a reuse shop at the sites, which is obviously something for us to consider in future meetings, that would be our principal route for offering that kind of reuse function.
Have FCC mentioned any increase in, because of the COVID, and I know that people have been very active in painting and decorating at home during this period of time. Have they seen an increase in the pots and that at the sites?
Not that I'm aware of. I will check that out, though.
Yeah, do that, just so we know, and to see where they're taking it or dealing with it as well. Because if there has been increase, there could be some form of place that they're working with. Okay. Is there any other person wishing to? Yes, Tony. I see your hands up. Tony? Yeah.
No, sorry, that was from the previous item.
Thank you.
Is it gone now? My hand?
Yes, it has. Thank you.
My apologies.
No, not at all, sir. Are there any other questions on the minutes of the meeting? No? Then I will move on swiftly because I'm sure we all want to get on today. Urgent items of business. Are there any urgent items of business?
No, none received, Chair.
Thank you. Then on that part, then we will be going to the progress report, which again is you, Oliver, isn't it?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Item 7, pages 11 to 24.
Thank you very much. As members will be aware, since we last met properly, obviously there's been a lot of change. When we came to reopening the sites, we had two principal objectives: public health, obviously, supporting residents, making sure that conditions are conducive to them feeling safe and being safe at the sites. Obviously, social distance is an important part of that, but we also made sure that, although because our sites are busy, we wanted to make sure that we managed the impact of potential queuing, as we've seen elsewhere, on our neighbours and also on our other services. Both our sites are busy, 1,500 visitors, which is 2 or 3 or 3 people every minute almost, were arriving as lockdown began to take hold. And people were being laid off, not going to work quite so much, working from home, apologies. So we needed to manage that. And our approach to that was to introduce a booking system. We wanted to make sure that there was access that was sufficient to residents, but as I say, we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to have the kind of queuing, significant disruption, and in some cases kind of minor public order issues for the police to resolve that were seen elsewhere. So our booking system started. We opened the sites on the 18th of May with 460 bookings per day and a full range of services, which was again something that was slightly different than a lot of places where they were limiting the services quite significantly. We've since added an extra hour to the day, so the sites are now open between 6 and 7 as well. So the full day is 8 until 7. We initially had off-site support on the highways to make sure that we could help our neighbours and make sure that our refuse freighters could continue to go in. We're now actually up at, we've even increased since the reports were finalised, so that we're now at a number of bookings of 670 per day. By way of comparison, in June, our neighbours West Berkshire were at 320 at their biggest site. So I mentioned that not to say we're better than them or anything, but to give some context in respect of the letter that was received by councils from government recently on the subject of tips and toilets, where we were advised that we shouldn't be unnecessarily restricting access to the tips bit. We wouldn't necessarily call it a tip, but it's a recycling centre, obviously. But the reason for raising that is that we feel that we've done a pretty good job in making sure that we're balancing keeping people safe with ensuring access to our residents. I think that's probably it, Chairman, other than to say that we are advising, given the sort of ongoing necessity for social distancing, the obvious popularity for visitors of the booking system and the conditions that we've established on site, we're recommending that we retain the booking system for the remainder of this year, but that we keep it under review at each board meeting. And should there come an end to social distancing, we've suggested that we would review it immediately at that point. And
just on that matter, before I will come to you, Parry. Can I just ask? You say 670. Is that at each of the sites?
That's 670 at Longshot Lane each day and 670 at Smallmead each day.
Very good. And I'm sure there have been a few persons that have come and booked, as we put it. So I'm quite pleased with that. As you know, I've been going there on a daily and then weekends just to see how it's running. And the response from the general public, the residents, has been very positive on the booking. Has anyone else had that? Well, I'll come round to you all. And that I'm pleased to say that of the letters or emails I've received from persons stating that they weren't happy with have been extremely low number comparative to the extent of people saying how well that they had the service, the quickness, they felt safe whilst doing it, and the staff, they were very complimentary, and that is something I would like at some stage that we recognise. That I think once we know which way we're going forward in the next couple of months, it might be nice for us to go as a party, not a party, but just to thank them, just to say how they have come out, as with our dustbin men and that as well, okay, at some stage. Parry, would you like to speak? Parry?
Thank you, Chair.
Pleasure.
Yes, I think the sentiments expressed by Wokingham residents were very, very similar to yours.
Yes.
So many congratulations to RE3 for managing everything so well, and the booking system has been recognised very, very well, and the residents are proposing themselves that this booking system is retained, Chair. So I'm very pleased that RE3 has taken that decision to continue booking the booking system until the end of the year, or until such time when social distancing might allow otherwise.
Yeah, on that subject, one person I spoke to said, well, we booked to go to a dentist, booked to go to a doctor's. This is working out really well for booking. As long as if we did consider it, I would like to think that we would take into the proposal those that do not have IT, how we could get round the purpose of that, how we can assist the older person as well that, would come forward. Yes, Tony. You're on mute.
Yes, I am. I'm going to take my hand down, I think, as well.
Yeah, thank you.
I would agree with those comments. Firstly, thanks to the officers We had some hiccups and teething problems in the early stages, but it settled down very well. As somebody who's used Small Mead twice under the booking system, I have encountered the same experiences that others have reported. Staff very helpful and polite, people overwhelmingly maintaining social distancing and responsibility in the use of the facility. In my first visit, there was somebody who obviously chose not to book, and there was a slight altercation clearly with the member of staff. The member of staff dealt with him very effectively. I was just about to get out of my car and give the bloke a mouthful, that's the car driver, not the member of staff, when he relented, turned his car around and drove off. I think certainly the way the staff have conducted themselves has been exemplary. So I would agree with you, Chair. I just wondered if Oliver or any of the officers could report whether there have been any serious problems or incidents, because certainly all the feedback I get is that the booking system is working well, and I would have no problems in supporting retaining that certainly until the end of the year and keeping it under review, and in principle permanently. But that's a decision for a later day.
The next meeting.
I think the point about IT and older people is overwhelmingly, I mean, I asked my neighbours, and so on the runs that I've made, I'm sort of doing more of a collective service as well. When one has a booking system, as we do have, clearly one will be looking for assistance from neighbours. When the council offices are reopened, there will be a facility, obviously, at our front of house service to be able to assist people in the small number that might not be able to access their own IT. And I suppose the other question I would have is, in terms of the pitching the numbers, what sort of pressures are we finding through you to Oliver? Are there any particular days of the week where we're encountering issues at the present time, or is the load being spread as a result of a booking system? Obviously, people can still look at alternatives and can spread the deliveries. So certainly, having looked at the booking site, it doesn't appear that there are any particular pinch points or bottlenecks, but I would welcome some feedback on that.
I will pass it over to Oliver. Whilst visiting, as I said, it's worth visiting and seeing how the system and talking to the officers at the crew and such. Because on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday morning, Wokingham's food waste trucks go in, and then Wednesday afternoon, Thursday and Friday, that's when they're at Reading. Do you want to carry on from that, on that, Oliver, just to explain how we're looking to increase and how it does help on weekends with regards to the delivery trucks not there?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Yes, first point that Councillor Page raised, have we had any incidents? No, we've not had any incidents. I was very worried because on the very first day we started, I spent the morning over at Longshot Lane and then came over to Smallweed in the afternoon, and I got a call from a colleague saying, we've had BBC Radio Berkshire on and they're saying that there's a fight broken out at Longshot Lane and the police are there. And I panicked and thought, oh no, this is exactly what we don't want. It hadn't happened at all. It was a complete falsehood. And that's as close as we've got to any kind of incident. So it has worked very well. And I think it's a really important point to pick up that the public have taken to it very well and have been happy to adhere to all of the new sort of conditions, which is probably what we're seeing almost everywhere. In terms of older people, we do allow bookings to be made over the phone for people who do not have. There are a small number of bookings that are available for people who do not have IT. So clearly that's not an invitation for everyone to pile in there. And in terms of the sorts of numbers, the chairman's quite right. We begun the bookings on a uniform 23 per hour, so 46 at 23 per half hour, 46 per hour. That's how you get to the original 460, and that was just averaged out across the day. What we've done while we've been taking away the highways support is to begin to profile those bookings throughout the week. So Chairman's quite right. When we know on Mondays and Tuesdays that most Wokingham dust carts are heading over to Longshot Lane because of their scheduling, we slightly reduce down the numbers of bookings at Longshot Lane for those periods, and then increase them later on in the week, and then vice versa at Smallmead as the geographical scheduling for Wokingham takes them over to Smallmead in the last 3 days of the week. So in a sense, that's that flexibility of being able to work as a partnership and accommodating the needs of all of those different things. You know, Bracknell still wants to be able to get its refuse freighters in on a Monday and Tuesday alongside Wokingham, so we just drop the numbers down. And I think that profiling has helped us to hit all of those objectives that we talked about in terms of public health, and not allowing for there to be any big queuing and so on and so forth.
I will bring something else up here, Oliver. On page 16, 6.4, I want to compliment Monica and the girls on communications on all three councils with the click and tip. That has gone down very well and is ingenuitive in its own way, and they should be given the credit for that as well, okay? That I do think is important. And again, I don't know whether you were going to bring up what is on page 17, awards nominations. I mean, that stands out for itself there, okay? And no doubt when it comes to glass recycling, I'm sure a lot of us, I know for a fact, and I know John will vouch for me here, we did think it was Christmas again at Warfield, Tesco's, and I cannot compliment the officers being able to put together quickly enough extra bottle banks and such, and extra vehicles to collect. And the general public couldn't believe how well it has gone. And I am really pleased with that, considering that we are a large RE3, it's 3 councils, how well we've been able to cope and very few hiccups. Having said that, is there any more questions on this paper, ladies and gentlemen, that you can see that you may want to talk to? No? Then, ladies and gentlemen, on page 11, recommendation 2, 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. Can I take them as read? And Hannah, would you like, are there any for or against, or I can see no problems with that? Can we take it as taken? Agree?
I'm happy with that, Councillor Hayes.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Then, ladies and gentlemen, moving on, we come to, I think this is the pink, isn't it? Is that where you come in, Anna, now?
Yeah, so you need to move the public press item,
Yes.
and then we will confirm with Callum after that he's stopped streaming.
So, therefore, pursuant to Regulation 4 of the Local Authorities Regulation 2012, and having regard to the public interest, members of the public and press be excluded from the meeting for consideration of item 9 and 10, which involves the likely discussions of exempt information under the following category of Schedules 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authorities of that information. Is that seconded, please? Thank you, Tony. Councillor Page. Does any member oppose move any of the private private section? Right. In that case, I will ask the clerk to close the public part of the meeting and to confirm when the live broadcast has ended. Please would all members stay in the meeting while this is done. Thank you very much.
Chair. Callum, can you confirm once the meeting has stopped live streaming, please?